4-1, hoping to get that 5-1, so they're one step closer to that top 16.
Yeah, we're going to get the deck list in order here for a second and talk a little bit about what's going on. Casie said Shaman banned away, and Gallon has had Rogue banned away. Hunter, again, I think has been one of the big talks of this tournament and really shaping the way a player's lineup looks. Even Warlock, I think, is a very strong deck coming into this tournament, but Death Rattle Hunter and its prominence, it's really not a deck that you want to ban because it does have some readily identifiable weaknesses within that deck, and one of them, namely, is aggression.
Speaking of aggression, Flame Imp on 1.
Yeah, and this is kind of the deck that I really was alluding to with the Even Warlock thing. Zoo is very strong against the decks that really want to focus on mid-range pressure. You just get stuff on the board early and try to punish them before they get substantial defense. One of the times that works is also against Druid when they fail to have early removal. Now, the problem that you're seeing with Gallon here is that he's drawn pretty much all the top end of the deck. You usually see something along the lines of 4 to 6 cards that are in the 5 cost range, and then everything else is low to the ground. Having an early start where you get checked isn't the end of the world because you run stuff like Happy Ghoul. So being able to heal yourself and get 2 3/3s on board, it's emulating that early pressure with just the timing of it. And sometimes that timing is actually more important than the actual pressure itself.
Yeah, while it is great to get those out on turn 1, getting free 3/3s out on turn 3 or 4 is not bad at all either.
Yeah, I mean, you think about one of the most powerful cards that are in aggressive decks, it's Fungalmancer, and, buffing 2 minions at the same time. So timing that pressure and being able to play 2 threats simultaneously is really the big deal. Oftentimes you can leave yourself with 3 minions on board, and your opponent's only going to be able to actively kill one of those minions, especially if it's something like Druid, where the minions are quite few and far between.
Here's kind of a decision point for Gallon. Goes with tapping 2 turns in a row on turns 2 and 3.
Yeah.
I was going to say, he kind of has the Flame and Blightward in play. He can go for just the vanilla Happy Ghoul 3/3. Do you want to go wide to set up for that Fungalmancer? Do you want to just get as much stats on the board as possible and be mana efficient? Chose to go with just the tap.
Yeah, Gallon is a player that I think that favors board development typically over pretty much anything else you can do. But one of the big things to talk about with Druid is Fungalmancer. Again, not only is it one of the most powerful things that aggressive decks do, but it's especially so against Druid. In this matchup, when you're able to stack a lot of stats on multiple minions at once, that's when the pressure really starts pouring on. One of the main modes of defense is going to be Spreading Plague. And Spreading Plagues are 1/5s, but if you have a bunch of 5/4s, Spreading Plague looks a lot worse in that situation. So Gallon, when he's tapping here, he's just trying to find an efficient turn to be able to play a Fungalmancer and then follow up with a second Fungalmancer. Look for that to be the pressure that really ends.
Yeah, the more stats you get on the board before that turn 6, so you get more Fungalmancer value, and that 6-mana Spreading Plague all of a sudden just becomes basically a 6-mana Frost Nova.
Yeah.
And 6-mana Frost Nova is not a very good card.
No, it's really not. It's actually, I would say it's quite a poor card, is the way that I would phrase it. And so Gallon here, he's tapped 2 turns in a row, and then suddenly he lands on this looking turn, and Casey's, perhaps looking at the Spreading Plague, but, I'm looking at Light Warden that's threatening to get bigger. I'm looking at Happy Ghouls and stuff that's threatening to get buffed. And so being able to draw Moonfire and then launch a Mind Control tech into this is a really big deal because he needs to stave off this pressure and find a better turn for Spreading Plague than just coin Spreading Plague right here.
These Mind Control techs have been doing a lot of work this weekend. I think that's just kind of an underrated card we haven't really talked about. And I think a lot of people are kind of either for or against MC Tech at this point. And so far, I'm on Team 4. It has done a whole lot of work. I
remember during playoffs, I was like, going in Asia Pacific, I was like, please just let one of the Asia Pacific players submit 4 decks with Mind Control tech so I can just pick them. It's a card that, it tries to punish these early board states that want to extend into a Fungalmancer turn. I think it does it really well. The issue with Mind Control tech, of course, is the built-in variation with it. If your opponent has a small minion and then 2 medium minions and a big minion, if you steal the small minion, a lot of times it doesn't really mean anything. It just means that you spent 3 mana on a 3/3, really. But being able to have turns like this are really the important ones. And so Gallon's tapping, you see it pay off here, able to find another 1-drop and another Fungalmancer. So even though Casie has stifled most of this pressure, he still has another 1 or 2 barriers to check off. And that Arcane Tyrant, I think, might be the card that can do it.
Definitely one of the cards he needs to get back into this game. And unfortunately for Gallon, all this tapping has left him with a Doomguard and a Soulfire in the same hand. And if you're Gallon right now, do you go for it?
Well, that 4/4 really needs to go away.
Really?
That is one of the big things that I look at. But the thing is, does it need to go away this turn, or are you just going to let it trade in combat? So Gallon needs to focus on board pressure right now. There's no Fungalmancers left in the deck, and Casey's at 12 life. So being able to get a substantial push before Casie reaches 8 mana pretty big deal. You know, Malfurion is something you want to think about, but Lich King is probably the next big point for Gallon to really consider. It just so happens Casie has Lich King right now, and when the way that Casey's opened quite slow, I think that that's a measure that's going to more often be there as a result of that. If he lets Casie get to a safe Ultimate Infestation turn, it's not going to work, and he's not going to win. So the question is, do you buff up the Light Ward and take care of this and let the Arcane Tyrant trade, or do you risk losing the Doomguard and try to go for it afterwards? Gallon, not willing to take the risk this turn.
Especially since, if we're looking at the list right now, that's his only Doomguard.
Yeah.
And getting rid of one is bad enough, but if it's your only one, that's even worse.
Yeah, and so Casie here, like, this is good recognition from Gallon, knowing that Malfurion's really the card that's going to stave off this pressure, or a second swipe would be the card that's going to stave off this pressure. None of those are there, and Gallon might be able to get out of this.
Just gaining armor, knowing the Lich King's coming down next turn, hopefully can carry the rest of the way.
Yeah, it looks kind of dire because Casie has so much life, but Gallon's going to be drawing 2 cards a turn. So if he draws something significant over the next 3 or 4 draws, that's really, I think, where he's going to seal this deal.
A lot of damage on the board. Fungal Enchanter picked up to top off this board. We just picked up the Tar Creeper, so do you trade when you got Taunt on the board?
Yeah, never trade in this spot.
I like it.
I don't think Gallon can afford to. Like, maybe you trade off the small ones to, you know, as a hedge against Spreading Plague, but Casey's already used one, and he's going into a 10-mana turn, which is going to be like Ultimate Infestation, Malagos, or Lich King. It's going to be one of those things, and one of those things is not threatening. It's the Malagos. Right now, the Lich King looks like it's contested on board, and Casie draws Ultimate Infestation. The huge draw for Casie.
Absolutely critical at this point.
Now, there are no Tyrants left, so that's a big thing to note, is that he doesn't get the mega tempo swing by having a Tyrant back behind this. But he finds a Moonfire to chip away some damage, and he's able to trade off either a 3-3 and keep something, or the 4-4 in this spot. So Casie now might be in a firm lead.
Yeah, every point of damage is going to matter for Gallon at this point, because like we said, only has the 1 copy of Doomguard, and by playing that 1 copy of Doomguard, got rid of 1 copy of Soulfire, so the only reach really left in the deck is that last Soulfire, and he's still got 16 points of damage to go.
Yeah.
Both Fungalmancers gone. Going to come down to...
I mean, Dreadlords are in here.
I believe it's just the 1.
He's got 1 copy of Despicable Dreadlord, and that's what Casey's thinking about right now. If he trades over the Fungal Enchanter, the 3-3, what that means is he's going to be left with a 4-1, and that turns Despicable Dreadlord into a massive draw at that point. So rather than just, you know, try to buy that little bit of extra value, decides that taking more damage off the board is favorable. Gallon not too good at this stage, and with Lich King, you know, fuel up and ready to go, this might be the turning point.
Soul Infusion on the Voidwalker, not exactly what Gallon is looking for. Really wants to hit that Doubling Imp or a Serenite Chain Gang, but they are nowhere to be found.
Pretty much looking at the big stuff, right? The Serenite Chain Gangs, Despicable Dreadlord, and then, you know, Life Drink or Doubling Imp. Just stuff to get more stats on board. This gets more stats on board, but it's loaded onto one thing and it dies. So rather than use the Soul Infusion, hope that he draws Doubling Imp, hope that he draws Serenite Chain Gang, and maybe still has a little bit of push left.
And he does have the 1 copy of the Solarium, and so I think that's going to be the last bit of push he's going to need to get through this game.
Solarium would definitely be a big one right now. I don't think much question about it. So for Casie, he's going to opt for the draw to initially, and I think this is going to dictate a lot of the ways he plays this. So, you know, if he was able to pick up some really efficient removal there, maybe you deviate from Lich King. And it's an ugly sight to see if you're Gallon.
But at the same time, he can get through it on board, and he's only 4 damage shy. There's the Serenite Chain Gang.
So it gets to load up again, but Casie did find Doom Pact, and, you know, Doom Pact, a lot of times with off Lich King, it's one of the cards where it's either really good or really bad, and I'd say right now, it's really not looking that bad. There's a lot on board for Gallon. The cards left in Casey's deck matter, but, you know, his life matters a lot more, and so it's looking like Ferocious Howl, and then looking like perhaps a Doom Pact.
Trade first, so we discard 2 less cards.
Yeah, you do want to discard less cards, but honestly, the ones that are remaining probably are just not that relevant for Casie. You know, the 8 armor you just gained from Ferocious Howl protects him a lot from coming boards. And Gallon, you see the reaction to it.
Ooh, a little bit in his flute.
Yeah,
Twig, not needed.
Nothing. Deck still works.
We still got Alex. We still got Malagos. Swipe, even.
Nice draw.
Get us a little further into the deck. Tap first.
Yeah, the problem is you're looking at Spreading Plague in Casey's deck or in Casey's hand right now, and Gallon does not have Fungalmancer left, and just the push potential through that is so limited. And Gallon now faced with a really awkward option. Do you Solarium now and try to find heat? Or do you wait? And honestly, I'm looking at this board and I think you wait. But I don't know if he has time to wait. Yeah, so you don't wait. Just go for it.
The other thing, too, is we talked about he's already drawn most of his top end. Both the Fungal Mancers are gone. The Doom Guard's gone. And so, statistically, he's going to draw his entire low end. And so, he should be able to play most of what he draws.
That Soulfire is a painful sight for Gallon right now. Wait, no, that's right. It wasn't from Solarium. I'm stupid. It's just like I saw Solarium happen, and I'm like, every card you draw gets discarded. That's not how that card works. It stays in hand.
Fortunately for Gallon, Soulfire coming down a little late, but still pretty good here. The Spreading Plague is going to do a lot of work, though, because like you said, no more Fungal Mancers left in the deck to buff up the stats to push through.
Yeah.
This is more than a Frost Nova.
I'm thinking that, probably other Sarnite Chain Gang, Despicable Dreadlord are the only relevant draws left for Gallon. He's really deep into the deck right now. So with, 8 life, I just don't think that this gets there. Like, the Spreading Plague absorbs so much damage that I just don't think Gallon gets a significant push going again.
Gallon down to 7 life. And Casie hasn't really done a whole lot of damage. That's basically just through tapping.
So Gallon gets to play his whole hand here, but I'm just not sure. Again, this does it. 1 dead. That's 2 dead. Goes up to 8, and there's 3, 4, 5, 6. Yeah, that's lethal on board with the swipe in hand for Casie. So Casie taking game 1, able to get past 2 Fungal Mancers, and a little bit of early stumble from Gallon. That's part of the difference too. Fungal Mancers were really powerful, but if you miss that chip damage, your opponent's going to have just that little bit of extra life to work with to get the job done.
I'm looking at the rest of Casey's lineup. I think that was a very fortunate matchup for him to get the Zoo with the Malagos Druid, because looking at the rest of his decks, he's got the Shudderwalk Shaman and the Death Rattle Hunter.
3/3s, for seemingly free after that. It's a really difficult spot to be in. So I do think that was probably the better match for Casie, was Druid against the Zoo Warlock. The rest of Gallon's lineup looking pretty brutal in the versus Druid department.
Gonna queue up the Death Rattle Hunter. Looks like we've got a little bit of a mirror going on. Prince Kelseth in the hand for Casie, double tracking. Did he choose to keep the Candle Shot?
Well, that's really, one of the interesting things about this matchup is that the cards that are strong in the matchup are not quite what you would think they are. I think I'm in favor of mulliganing Candle Shot in this matchup because the main focus is finding your tempo plays. So, being able to get an egg on board and then activate it. Being able to flanking strike your opponent. Having Katharina in general to have a game plan to work towards. When you have Katharina, your hand is a lot more defined than when you don't. And I'm looking at Keleseth in Casey's hand, but Keleseth honestly is more of like a symptom of the way that the deck ends up building itself. It just doesn't play 2-cost cards. There's nothing that really works for the game plan. And so you look down at your 29-card shell and you go, I guess Keleseth?
I don't have any other 2-drops.
Yeah, I mean,
might as well.
There's not really any 2-cost cards the Death Rattle Hunter wants to play in the deck. And so this card just ended up finding its way in here by happenstance more than it is being one of those tools that's quite vital and necessary. It's impactful often, but it's honestly just kind of decent in this deck. It's one of the decks that Keleseth, I think, I see it and I go, dang it. And then I go, it's really not that big a deal. If I'm going to lose this game, it's going to be because of giant Death Rattle activation turns.
Tracking, Hair-Scale Stalker, Spider Bomb, Hunter's Mark. Didn't really have any Death Rattle activations that he's going to be able to do anytime soon. Goes for the Spider Bomb just to fight for board. Katharina in hand. This is just not a whole lot going on Gallon's side.
Well, it's a kind of a slow matchup too. If players don't speed onto the board again with Death Rattle stuff, Katharina is really the most important card. And so I look at this turn and I wonder, how is Casie going to play this one? If he hadn't drawn this Gluttonous Ooze, would the Terror Scale Stalker have hit play? That's really a big question mark on my head. And frankly, I think it would have, but that Casey's just not going to be excited about it. And here we see the Keleseth really making a difference. The fact that it's buffed Ooze makes Flanking Strike a little bit worse. That's really the big decision point for Casie, is do you play a 3/3 into a Flanking Strike turn? Gallon was talking with me this morning when we went to grab coffee. He said, okay, Admirable, you got to make a point to people. When they're playing Odd Rogue, they need to stop playing 3/3s into their opponent's Flanking Strike turn. I was like, well, that's a pretty stark opinion you got here, Gallon. Like, is it like, what if that's your only play? And he goes, well, if it's your only play, you play. But because if you can do pretty much anything else good, you don't play a 3/3 into a Flanking Strike turn. He's like, that on Odd Rogue, that is how you lose that matchup. And I was like, wow, pretty crazy to think about that the tempo swing is that important of a mechanism.
Just another reason why Henge Clan Thug is such a good card in Odd Rogue, just because you get to that 4/4 stat line, the turn it comes down, getting outside the range. Candle Shot would be pretty good here on Galen's side. We were talking about how Candle Shot really doesn't have that many targets, but 4/4 along with Flanking Strike, that would be enough.
Yeah, and so you see the Deathstalker Rexar in Casey's hand. That's one of the more important cards in the matchup as well. Galen wants to find that eventually, but right now it's a matter of, partitioning resources and playing the board. You notice that Galen is really hesitant to use Flanking Strike in this spot, and it's because his hand is, quite weak on the defense department. So he wants Hunter's Mark and Flanking Strike to be his mode of defense to, say, an opposing Witchwood Grizzly, for instance. 3/7's still pretty darn good, and, Casie going to be able to take this out. But Galen is just working towards not falling too far behind as he approaches Katharina.
There's also a huge upside to this play in the event that the Witchwood Grizzly doesn't get destroyed. You got Cube and play dead.
That is the big one. I mean, if that happens, you're typically in a lot of trouble. So Casie wants to, put a lot of attention into making sure Witchwood Grizzly does not stay on board for a Cube turn. Cube is one of the most important cards in the deck because of how much it gives you on board at once.
So do we run the Witchwood Grizzly back, or do we flank and strike the flank and strike?
Well, the first one failed.
Mm-hmm.
And in Galen's head, that means the second one is more likely to succeed. But he did just see it tracking as well, and we're moving into a clean Rexar turn from Casie as well. So if he plays another 3/7, Rexar takes us out, but it leaves Casie with no minions on board if that's the case. So it looks like that Galen's just trying to force the utility from Casie, and then when the Katharina hits, perhaps have a follow-up that doesn't get checked. But it looks like Galen's also quite frustrated with the way this game is going so far, so...
I think the more removal that Galen baits out now, the more effective this Katharina is going to be later on. And let's see, what team is Galen on? Is he on Team Savannah Highman?
No, Galen's definitely not on Team Savannah. I don't even have to look at the deck to know that. I'm going to check it anyway because...
Just to double check.
Yeah, it is Charged Devilsaur. So he also runs a copy of Saronite Chain Gang in the deck as well. 1 Mind Control tech and 1 Zilliax. Zilliax has become, I think, quite standard in a lot of the Death Rattle hunters recently. But Charged Devilsaur is really, in my opinion, the 4th beast to run in this deck. Katharina often leaves you with a situation where you need to be playing defense. And while Savannah Hyman's a good card, it doesn't play defense if you pull it from Katharina, or if you just play it on turn 6. And a lot of times when you need to substantiate that defense in your 4th beast in the deck, aside from the Grizzlies and aside from the King Crush, can't play that defense, that's when you really get in trouble. And so I am a big proponent of 4th beast equals Charged Devilsaur in this deck.
Speaking of defense as well, we can kind of see the mindset Galen was in when he was making this deck for this tournament, because we see the Mind Control tech and the Saronite Chain Gang, so he's definitely thinking aggression was going to be an issue this tournament, and the Charged Devilsaur just reinforces that.
Yeah, we're seeing Defender of Argus make an impact here for Casie as well. I mean, this might be too much for Galen to overcome at this point. The Defender of Argus would have played a similar role to the way that Saronite Chain Gang did here as well, but drawing both Witchwood Grizzlies and having them both checked means that Katharina just does not play good defense at that point. Even in the King Crush or Charged Devilsaur scenario, Galen sees a 2-turn setup that he can't stop. And that's really the big one to look at there. Maybe a bit of an early concede, but it looks like a respect concede to me among fellow competitors there.
Yeah, and you can definitely see how the matchup plays up right there, because you have the Katharina and the play dead, and you're just like, what's the problem? Why are you conceding? Well, you have the thing. And
now, but, Casie is playing not Zoo. And so when there's no aggression on Casie's side, when it's seeded into big minions, this is really where Death Rattle Hunter can thrive in a matchup. Even Warlock is, I was talking about at the start, a very powerful deck, but the mechanisms that check it often leave it feeling helpless sometimes. I still am a big proponent of this deck. I think that it's played more of as a control deck way too often. It is a weird kind of aggro deck that basically plays a minion and Blessing of Kings in the same turn, like with Mountain Giant. You want to play big stuff and you want to start hitting them. Don't trade on this unless you are just dead if you don't trade. Because as soon as you start hitting them in the face, that's when your opponent starts second-guessing themselves. If you have a strong minion on board and your opponent hits you with a Mountain Giant instead, you look down and you go, is he going to kill my minion and then I'm not going to be able to kill this Mountain Giant? And it starts to put doubt in your opponent's head. The range that you have to play around from even Warlock is very predictable, but that doesn't make it easier to play against. It really does not. It's about how the deck is played and then the timing of that pressure and when it happens. So for Galen, it's really a matter of just killing all of Casie's stuff in a row until he finds a big turn.
In addition to that, Evenlock is one of the few decks in the format right now that has that Spellbreaker that is so crucial at having game against Hunter. But with so many death rattles in the engine, it's just so hard to clear. Defile, Hellfire, your traditional board clears are just going to make more stuff.
Yeah, it's really tough for Casie to get a strong foothold unless he can land big tempo turns. And Spellbreaker is certainly one of the cards that can give him that opportunity. But Gallon has a lot of tools in the deck that also can, mitigate those opportunities as well. Using Death Rattle activations immediately, having Hunter's Mark for big minions, and at some point you're going to stick something and Cube's going to happen. That's why it's important for Casie to find pressure early on.
I've talked to a lot of pro players about what to do on turn 2. He went for the Vulgar Homunculus over the tap, and then on turn 3 going for the Homunculus tap again. What's he thinking right now? Why is this Vulgar Homunculus so crucial to get down right now?
Well, there's 2 reasons why. Number 1 is the Hunter deck, and they're going to be vulnerable to early stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of what I was just talking about. Even Warlock is really a weird variation of a Zoo deck, in my mind, where you just have big stuff that happens less frequently, but it happens in a very consistent manner, and you want to start attacking your opponent very aggressively very soon. Gallon uses a Hunter's Mark on turn 2 to wipe out a Vulgar Homunculus. I'm actually quite surprised that that's the case. But if he doesn't clear off the Vulgar Homunculus, what that means is there's going to be a minion on board for when he wants to Spider Bomb and play dead.
Mm-hmm.
What it means is that he's not going to be able to use the Hunter's Mark to kill a Mountain Giant if it hits the board. It's the first target that's there, and it's one of the prime things to take care of. So Gallon wants to aggressively attack past that Homunculus and hope that he finds a way to out-tempo Casie later on. So having Spider Bomb play dead here allows him to have Cube on turn 5, and that starts putting a lot of pressure on Casie. You see how that one small, very counterintuitive looking decision can lead to a massive lead for Gallon, and that's really the risk that you take when you're facing other very strong players. You don't want to give them room to capitalize. You want to have that for yourself.
Even with just tempoing out a 3/3, like you only have so many Death Rattle procs in the deck, and he just wants to fight for board just to do exactly what you just said, is just so the Spider Bomb has a guaranteed target.
Yeah.
And I really like what Casey's doing here as well. The Twilight Drake kind of poking. Gallon's like, hey, what do you got? Do you got any removal? You're going to have to use it on this Twilight Drake. Then the Mountain Giant's going to come over the top next turn.
Yeah. Honestly, Gallon's on 2 of the worst cards of the matchup with King Crush early on and with Candleshot. There are a lot of cards that play that same style of role, but it's the second Candleshot that's really biting him here. That card is pretty much dead at this point. Card economy is a big thing to focus on here. And Gallon, this is really brilliant from Gallon. Chooses not to use the play dead here on the Spider Bomb, knowing that opens up Hellfire from Casie. But that's where the Spellbreaker comes in. It was that opportunity right there. Gallon recognized he was running low on cards, needed to take a bigger risk to get something done, and there it is. So Gallon now tries to answer back with the Cube, perhaps the play dead in the same turn, and try to resubstantiate that board presence. This is like a very unique and interesting dance that's taking place here, where those singleton cards that really matter in certain situations are mattering a lot in this game so far.
Here's another thing. Choosing to swing with the Spider Bomb before cubing it. I know a lot of players are really skeptical about getting that even lock closer to that 15 mark, because now he has the option to tap into the Hooked Reaver.
Kill him.
But just kill him.
You got to kill him.
That's a lot of Spider Bombs.
Yeah, see, that's the thing, is Gallon knows that in order for Casie to really get past this, the Spider Bombs are such a big threat that he can't really afford to just play a Hooked Reaver into this turn. And what that means is that Defile and Hellfire are going to be the 2 big answers. That opens Gallon to perhaps being able to make an aggressive push or a free turn to land Deathstalker Rexar.
This looks like that free turn. Build a beast every turn. It feels bad kind of playing Rexar at this point because your opponent's so low. You have that thing in the back of your mind saying, I could steady shot him down.
Yeah,
I could do it.
It's not going to work.
It's so close.
It's not going to work. Then all of a sudden, Bubblies and Yummies, and they play 7/7s, and they taunt their stuff, and then they Spellstone for 7.
Yeah,
and
they Fireball and heal for 7.
Yeah. I mean, Gallon, drawing a number of dead cards did really affect this match, but Build a Beast is scary and can bring back a lot of situations.
It also creates a lot of situations that the Hunter normally doesn't have access to, because one of the biggest Build a Beast things that you want to do is the Bloat Bat with the Poisonous. But the problem is a lot of times you don't really have a way of activating it the turn you make it. But with Play Deads in the deck and Terrasail Stalkers in the deck, it gives you a lot more options for that removal.
So Casie plays for like a hard tempo turn, trades in the Hooked Reaver to guarantee a development of another one, and then back that up. So he wants the max pressure on Gallon, and he wants to lead into Gul'dan as aggressively as possible. So he just takes the sacrifice on his 7/7 there. Doesn't try to get an ooze on board and hope that gets hit. He just goes, I got plenty of stuff.
I ain't running out anytime soon. He has Gul'dan in the hand. It's going to bring it all back anyway. And King Crush, 9 mana 8/8 is going to struggle to push through a 4 mana 7/7.
Yeah, I mean, it's starting to turn into a battle of attrition, honestly. And Casie, has the big top end for it. Gallon's had some pretty good stuff going on, but he has just a few less cards to work with right now. And so I believe that is lifesteal with Hydra.
Oh, yeah.
So 12 lifesteal for 10 mana. And with Hydra, it's particularly interesting because when the Hydra normally would damage yourself, when it gets damaged, the lifesteal just retroactively applies and counteracts that. So it's just a 10 mana, 12 lifesteal.
With no downside at all, because one of the liabilities you have playing Warlock with the Build-A-Beast when you build these Hydras is Defile, and sometimes your opponent can get a lot of damage really quickly with some Defile math, but with the lifesteal, no longer an issue. That's just a big old minion.
Second Spellbreaker as well for Casie. So, I mean, Gallon's going into King Crush to trade, into Zombies to sustain, and the second Spellbreaker is going to come down after Blood Reaver Gul'dan comes down, and I think that means Gallon's pretty darn dead here.
A lot of damage coming down really quickly. Going with the Dread Infernal to kill off King Crush.
Whoa, I am really surprised by that. So is this a 2-turn setup for perhaps more damage, or?
I was expecting him to trade in just one of the smaller minions, like the Acidic Swampoos, and then just play Gul'dan, and then go wide after that. But he's going wide now.
So this is 13 damage that's on board for Casie right now. So Gallon knows that he's not quite dead to Hellfire, but he knows that if he plays this Zombies and he can't get anything substantiated, like say he runs into Spellbreaker, he's just pretty dead in that situation. So Gallon is right now weighing the dreadful option of not playing this giant lifesteal beast or going to take the risk, build a beast, and perhaps losing the game outright on the spot. Like, Casie just has the second check to it.
You can look at Gallon right now. He is struggling, like head in the hands. He's just struggling to think through this. I built this Zombies and I want to play it,
this
is
supposed to be a good matchup. And it didn't work out. Goes to the Zombies, and second Spellbreaker is going to punish that. When I say punish, I don't mean that Gallon made a mistake here. What I mean is that Casie goes, it doesn't matter what you do. It's not going to work.
Again, Greymane off the top. Not even needed. We have so many options. We have the Skulking guys, Spellbreaker. He doesn't. Does he know? Is he clearing?
What?
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 But now he's at 30.
I mean, maybe that doesn't really matter that much. I'm just like really surprised.
He was so close. He could have put him so low.
That's really interesting. Okay, so if he sinks him down to, whatever life, the Zombies does lifesteal that back. If Gallon is able to find a clear from the Build-A-Beast, Casie is going to die to that 12/12. That's a really scary measure to leave on board. And so Casey's saying here that he has the gas to back this up, that he can continue to play a value game and continue to set up high-pressure board states. I don't really disagree with that. I'm just very surprised that that's what he chose to go with. That Bittertide Hydra was quite isolated into attacking smaller minions. And so if Casie just makes a big push and then plays Blood Reaver Gul'dan, I actually don't think the 12 life saves Gallon in that spot. So it has to be a fear of some other point of range that Casey's really thinking about in that situation. Just very surprising.
Really?
I'm going to ask Casie about that after this match because I'd love to hear the thought on that. Casie is a very strong player who has something in mind when this is happening.
I think maybe he's thinking something along the lines of he knows his deck, just like on average, is going to be better than what a Build-A-Beast maybe can be every single turn, and also that Gallon has to get somewhat lucky in order to get something that can clear board, and that he can just get there.
Look at what's happening.
He is down to 11 already.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, this was the plan. I would just love to hear like how he landed on this spot, because it feels very counterintuitive, and that to me is a mark of the experience that Casie has in this matchup. I do not have the experience to know if that is a very successful game plan from the outright, but Casie was very quick on that turn, very decisive, and very confident in it.
Yeah, just going back to Lorinda's stats that he posted earlier, Casie was also on that list. I believe he was sitting at around like a 68% win rate across all the tour stops. So he's right up there with Hunter-Ace, right up there with Amnesiac.
For a while, Casie boasted the most top 16s in tour stops for the entire year. It actually might still be the case, but Casie was up there with the best of them. He was missing the top 8 spots, missing winning the big titles, but in terms of top 16s, he was the leader for a while.
68.6 to be exact.
Yeah, that's a lot.
He has just as many top 16s as Hunter-Ace as well.
There you go. Hunter Ace, I think, he brought that up recently with another turf shot performance.
10 damage still on the board for Casie. He's so close to finishing this game. He has Lich King, he's got Mountain Giant, he's got everything he could possibly want.
Lich King is really, pretty much ending this game.
Yeah.
Right here. This was a really good recognition from Casie to know that he could continue to just disrupt Gallon's game plan and still have a pushback behind it that made sense and was very relevant.
All right, let's see if we can get the boat blat or bloat bat.
No, the boat blat.
Yeah, that one.
Yeah,
new card.
It's a yacht that Rexar can make sometimes. Paint the name.
Build a boat. Has Poisonous, unfortunately, does not have the AoE to combo with it.
Yep,
Too
Gallon.
little, too late.
Casie 3-0 over Gallon, and very confident, decisive play. Casie has always been one of the players to play on the quicker side of things, and pretty recently, it feels like